The sea air that night clung to my skin like a second uniform damp, briny, threaded with the metallic temps of the North Atlantic and the distant whisper of burning oil from a sunken freighter 2 days past. I sat hunched over the Marconi T-36 transmitter in the belly of the Ortbergs, its steel hull groaning softly with the rhythm of the swell, the thrum of the diesel engines, a constant companion beneath my ribs. Outside, the convoy HX-229, a serpent of 60 merchantmen and their escorts scut through the black like ghosts fleeing judgment. My fingers, chapped from salt and cold, hovered over the telegraph key, awaiting the next relay from the Admiralty in Liverpool. But what came crackling through the ether was not the clipped cadence of British naval code, nor even the familiar staccato of Polish Navy ciphers. It was German. Not just any German signal, this was Kriegsmarine traffic. Clean and clear, bouncing off the ionosphere with the arrogance of a wolf who believes the forest belongs to him. My first instinct was to log it, encrypt the intercept, and forward it up the chain. Standard procedure. But then I heard it again, echoing in the static between frequencies concentrieren BA grid IA 47. U-Boot Gruppe Seawolf. Treibstoff knapp. Fuel running low. Wolfpack Seawolf. Converging on grid. AE-47, the very coordinates where HX-229 was scheduled to rendezvous with fresh escorts out of Reykjavik within 48 hours. I should have reported it, but something coiled tight in my chest, something older than protocol, older than my oath to the Polish government, and I thought of Gdynia burning in '39, of the radio school in Bydgoszcz reduced to rubble while I practiced dots and dashes under lamplight with my classmates, most of whom never made it past 41. I thought of the silence that followed the fall of Warsaw, how the airwaves went dead, how the only sounds left were boots on cobblestone and the occasional burst of machine gun fire echoing over silent streets. So I did not log it. Instead, I adjusted the oscillator coil, fine-tuned the heterodyne to eliminate harmonic distortion, and waited until the German transmission ended. Then, with deliberate slowness, I rekeyed the message note in Enigma, not in any German cipher, but in British Naval Codef, the one used by Western Approaches Command for logistical I altered only 2 figures. I shifted the grid from a -47 to AE 8250 into a stretch of water so barren even the whalers avoided it. Then I added a prefix. Urgent, convoy reassignment, confirm acknowledgement. My hand did not tremble. That surprised me. Perhaps the cold had numbed it, or perhaps the weight of what I'd done had already settled into my bones, displacing fear with a strange, humming clarity. I sent it on 500 kilohertz there. International distress frequency, knowing German listening posts would log it, cross-reference it, and assume it was genuine traffic meant for escorts who, in reality, would never hear it. The British would ignore it out of sequence, unauthenticated, but they would trust it. They always trusted British traffic more than their own. The silence after the final dot was heavier than the storm that had raged 3 nights prior. Rain began to patter against the deck above, a soft drumming that merged with the thrum of the engines. I wiped my palms on my trousers, stood, and poured a cup of tea from the pot on the bulkhead. It was lukewarm, bitter with condensed milk and tannins, but it grounded me. Outside, the lookout shouted something in polished shod lampy, and I knew the rear columns of the convoy had just switched to blackout running. I returned to the quay, pretending to monitor routine traffic, while inside, the gears of consequence began to turn. Somewhere in the dark, a U-boat commander was adjusting his course, plotting a new intercept, trusting a lie wrapped in the syntax of his enemy. And I, Joseph Novak, radio telegraphist, 3rd class, born in Oath, train in France, now adrift between loyalty and subterfuge, had just committed an act that bore no name in the naval codebooks. Not sabotage, not espionage, something quieter, more intimate, the theft of certainty. The worst part wasn't the deception, it was how easily it had come. I kept listening, not for acknowledgement, there would be none, but for the absence of reply. And in that absence, I heard the first whisper of chaos taking root. Dawn came not with light, but with a slow dilution of black into grey, grudging surrender of the night that left the sea looking like hammered lead. I had not slept, no nea facade. The tension aboard the Berza had thickened into something palpable, a low hum beneath the usual shipboard routine. Officers moved with clipped precision, eyes flicking toward the wireless room every time a new signal came through. They didn't know what I'd done couldn't know, but they sensed a shift in the wind, the kind sailors feel before a squall breaks, even when the skies remain clear. By mid-morning, fragments began filtering in from other escorts. A U-boat sighting reported near AEAT to impossible. The duty officer muttered, "Nothing there but fog and icebergs." Then another. A German distress call, garbled, cut short, bearing the call sign of U-432. That one made my stomach clench. U-2, 432, had been part of Seawolf. If they'd steamed hard through the night toward AE-82, they'd be low on fuel, disoriented, isolated. Perfect prey for British hunter-killer groups or the open sea itself. I remained at my post, fingers resting lightly on the key, ears tuned to every whisper in the ether. The British Admiralty issued a routine update for HX-2-9. Maintain present course, escorts Delta and Echo to reinforce rear column at 1400 hours. No mention of my forged message. No alarm. They hadn't noticed, or they'd dismissed it as noise. Either way, the Germans had taken the bait. That was enough. But guilt is not. A shout, it's a drip. It finds the cracks in your resolve and seeps in, cold and relentless. I kept seeing the face of the German radioman whose signal I'd mimicked. A boy, likely hunched over his own set in the bowels of a steel coffin, sending coordinates with the same hope I once felt, sending news home to my mother in 39. Had he known his message would be stolen, reshaped, turned into a noose? Of course. No, that's the cruelty of war, not that men die, but that they die trusting the wrong voices. At 1347 hours, a new signal crackled through, this time from B-Dienst, German Naval Intelligence Unit. Verify IA-82. Erindisbusa, Anomalia. Festi state, my breath caught. They were checking. I watched the teleprinter stutter out the characters, each one a hammer against my ribs. If they cross-referenced with U-boat logs, if they realized no British escort had been rerouted, if they traced the frequency back to this sector, the Berza carried no cover for unauthorized transmission. I'd be court-martialed at best. At worst, they'd hand me over to the British as a rogue element, a liability. And the Poles, they'd disavow me faster than a burning cipher sheet. I stood, paced the narrow cabin, ran a hand through my hair stiff with salt. Then I sat again, cleared the log sheet I'd kept hidden beneath the frequency chart, and began composing a second message. Not in British code, this time. In Polish naval cipher, no Turiel. Encrypted, legitimate. U-boat. Activity concentrated grid. AE-82. Recommend aerial reconnaissance. I signed it with the watch officer's call sign. He sent similar alerts before and routed it through the standard channel to western approaches. Let them find the wolves I'd lured into the void. Let them strike. The truth would be buried in the wreckage. By late afternoon, confirmation arrived not by radio, but by aircraft. A Catalina from 210 Squadron spotted 3 U-boats on the surface near AEA-2, refueling from a disguised tanker. Depth charges followed. 2 confirmed kills. 1 escaped, trailing oil. No one connected the dots. No one ever does. That evening, as the convoys slipped into the protective shadow of the Icelandic shelf, I stepped onto the aft deck for air. The wind carried the scent of peat smoke from distant shores. A smell I hadn't known, I remembered. Stars pricked through the thinning cloud cover, indifferent and ancient. Somewhere beneath them, men were drowning in freezing water, cursing the silence where their comrades' replies should have been. And somewhere else, perhaps in a bunker beneath Lorient or a command post in Berlin, officers were burning documents, rewriting logs, erasing the mistake that had cost them ships. I had done my duty. Or had I merely dressed vengeance in the uniform of strategy? The distinction blurred in the cold. What remained was the weight of the key beneath my fingers, the echo of dots and dashes that were never mine, yet carried my name in every silence between them. I had not spoken a word aloud, yet I had shouted into the void, and the void had answered with fire. Back in the wireless room, the set hummed softly, waiting. I placed my hand on the cold metal casing, feeling the vibration of distant voices passing through, none of them knowing how thin the veil between truth and deception had become. And I wondered, would I do it again? The answer came not in words, but in the quiet click of the power switch as I turned it back on. I would, and I did.